Welcome back, third year students. Today we are going to do a poem by Robert Frost, and the name of the poem is Birches. Robert Frost is an American poet, and Birches is one of his most popular poems. And Birches means it is the name of a tree. And in this poem, he tries to establish a relationship between nature and human beings. And what he is trying to say is he is describing birch tree after a heavy snowfall. And even after the snow melts slightly, the birches hold a beauty. Even the ice crystals, they are very beautiful. And then he also imagines the presence of boys and girls for whom birches is the only game and sport. So let us start with the poem. When I see birches bend left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy has been swinging them. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay, as ice storms do. Now, students, you need to imagine a land covered with snow. Birch trees are growing in a line, and you have to imagine a scene where a lot of birch trees are growing, and the scene is just after a heavy snowfall. So, due to the heavy snowfall, the branches of the birch tree, they have bent towards left and towards right. So he says, when I see birches bend left and right, why are the branches bending left and right? Due to the heavy load of the snowfall across the line of straighter, darker trees. Now you see, there is a line, one after another, the birch trees are standing, and but in between, some trees have bent their branches towards left and right due to the heavy load of ice storms. Then the poet imagines that when I see a straight line of birch trees, and I can see that some branches of some trees are bending towards left and right, I like to think some boy has been swinging them. So he says, he imagines that I know that these birch trees and these branches of the birch tree are swinging due to the heavy load of ice storms, but he says that I like to imagine that some boy has been swinging them. He likes to imagine that these branches have bent due to the boys swinging on them. But he himself gives the answer. He says in the next line, but swinging doesn't bend them down to stay. Ice storms do. Now he says, swinging doesn't bend them down to stay. Means if boys have been swinging on them, the branches straighten themselves as soon as the boy is on the ground. But he says, ice storms do. The bending, the permanent bending, or bending for the more period of time, is done by storms, ice storms. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice and a sunny winter morning after a rain. Now he invites us to imagine that you must have seen them. Them means the birch trees. After a ice storm or after a rain, loaded with ice, a sunny winter morning. So we have to imagine that it is a winter morning and it is sunny, and all these trees are seen heavily loaded with ice. They click upon themselves as the breeze rises, and turn many colored as the stir cracks and creases their enamel. They click upon themselves. Now the branches of the trees, they are clicking upon themselves, means they are making a clicking sound. Why? Because in the morning the ice starts melting, and as the ice starts melting, it breaks, and so the clicking sound is created as the breeze rises. So during the morning time, when the breeze rises, what happens? That the ice on the branches of the birch tree, it starts breaking, and the breaking makes a clicking sound and turn many colored. Now, why does the trees turn many colored? See, first is it was green, then it became white due to ice, and then what happens? It becomes multicolored. Why? Due to the sun falling on them. The sun rays causes a lot of colors to be created on the enamel of the trees. As the stir cracks and creases their enamel. Enamel means the outer surface. Stir means the movement of the breeze. The movement of the breeze, what happens? It causes cracks in the ice and it creases their enamel. During the night time, it was raining heavily. It was ice storm. And in the morning, what happens? There is a stir. Stir means there is movement. The silence has broken due to the rising wind, and this rising of the wind, it cracks and creases the enamel, the outer surface of the trees, which is made up of ice. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells. Now it is a very beautiful image. He says, as soon as the sun becomes warmer, the sun's heat makes them shed crystal shells. Now the ice melts due to the sunshine, and what happens? We can see ice falling from the trees. So this scene is imagined as the trees are shedding crystal shells. The ice falling from the trees are compared with crystal shells. Now it is a metaphor. It is a beautiful example of metaphor. Now what do the crystal shells do? Shattering and avalanching on the snow crust. Now you see, the ice is falling on the ice surface. The ice particles, snow particles, are falling from the trees because they have been loosened due to the breeze and due to the sunshine, and they are falling on the snow crust. Now the crust of the earth is also covered with snow. So ice is falling on the surface of ice. So that is why there is a sound of shattering, because the hard surface is receiving a hard article. So shattering and avalanching. Now you see here the word avalanching is hyperbolic. Now you remember what is a hyperbole? A hyperbole is an overstatement, exaggeration. So avalanche is very a word used very deeply in the sense of heavy icebergs or heavy ice falling down and with a shattering sound. So such heaps of broken glass to sweep away. Now a heap of ice has been collected on the snow crust, and again it is a metaphor. He says, he compares the broken ice with broken glass, because glass also makes sound. Glass is also transparent and white. So he says he desires, like a small boy, to heap away the broken glass. Now, what is the broken glass? It is not the actual broken glass, but it is the ice particles, the snow. So, I request you to remember and read once again the essay First Snow, which you read in your second year. In that essay again, there is the same description of the first snowfall falling on the earth. So you would think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. Again, a beautiful image, and again, a beautiful metaphor. When you see the heaps of broken glass, or in other words, when you see a heap of ice on the snow crust, what do you think? As if the ceiling of the sky has fallen down. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away, and you would think the inner dome of heaven had fallen, because there is a lot of ice. And what do you feel? What do you think when you see such great heaps of ice? You will think, you will imagine that the inner dome, the ceiling of heaven, heaven means sky, as if a patch of sky filled with ice has fallen down. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the load. Now, they here means the trees. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the load. Now, what is the load? The load is of the ice, snow. And they are dragged, the branches of the trees, they come down due to the heavy load of ice. And they seem not to break, though once they are bowed for so long, they never right themselves. And you can see that it seems that they will not break. It is true, the branches will not break, but bending for such a long time causes a cripple. It causes the bowing down of the branches. So he says, though once they are bowed for so long, they means the branches of the birches, once when they are dragged down to the ground with the heavy load of the ice, they never straighten themselves. Why they never right themselves? Right themselves means they never stand in upright position. Why? Because for a long period of time they have been bearing the heavy load of ice. You may see their trunks arching in the wood. Now, arch is a semicircular thing. He says, you may see their trunks. You may see the trunks of the birches bending down in the wood. So, we can understand that these branches have been bent down due to the heavy load of the ice. Years afterwards, trailing their leaves on grounds. So now I will ask you to imagine that there is a birch tree whose trunk is not to be seen. Why? Because the branches are covering the trunk. The bending branches are touching the ground so that we can't see the trunk. Why the branches are bending down? Due to continuous heavy load of ice. Now, again, he gives a beautiful simile. Simile is a comparison between two dissimilar things on the basis of one or more common points, common characteristics. So he says, years afterwards, trailing their leaves on the ground, like girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. Now, he is imagining that these bent branches of the trees can be compared to girls' hair. A girl who has recently had a head bath and she has thrown her hair in front of her face to dry them in sun. so that her face is not to be seen. Her face is covered. In the same way, the trunk of the birch tree, they are covered. So before them, over their head to dry in the sun. So he compares the covered branches of the birch tree and the bent branches, the covered trunk of the birch tree and the branches bent, with a girl who has had a head bath and she is trying to dry her head, dry her hair in the sun, and her face is not to be seen as the trunk of the birch tree is not to be seen. But I was going to say, when truth broke in with all her matter of fact about ice storm. Now he says, I was going to say this, but truth came in with matter of fact. Now truth is always filled with facts. Truth is always factual. He was about to say that I would like to imagine that these branches are the girl's hair. And he was also about to say that some boys have been swinging them. But he says, truth broken. Now, what is the truth? That boys have not bent the branches of the birch tree, but it is bent due to the ice storm. I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to fetch the cows. But still, the poet says that I should have preferred to see these branches bent not by the ice storm, but some swinger of birch trees, some boys who have been swinging on them. And now, who are these boys? He is imagining that these boys are shepherds. And while going in and out the jungle to fetch their cows, they are playing with the birch trees. And what is their sport? They have been swinging on the branches of the birch tree. So I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to fetch the cows. Actually, the poet is imagining, because he himself has been a swinger of birch trees. He himself is remembering his childhood days when he was himself a swinger of birch trees. He used to swing on the branches of birch tree. Some boy too far from town to learn baseball. Now, for that boy, swinging on the birch tree's branch was the only sport. Why? Because he is living away from town. He is living in a village. He is living in the wilderness. So for him, baseball, the game of baseball was not available, and this was the only game which he had. And what was that game? The game was to swing on the birch tree, whose only play was what he found himself. He just found the branches of the birch tree and he played with it. Summer or winter, and could play alone. Now you see, here we can compare the city games and sports with this wild game. He says summer or winter. This game can be played in summers and in winters. But if you compare it with baseball or cricket, they can't be played in both the seasons. And could play alone. Again, comparison. He can play this sport all alone. He does not need a team. He does not need a bat or a ball or a baseball to play it. One by one he subdued his father's trees. Now, one by one. He did not subdue, or he did not bend all the branches of the tree for once. No. He subdued them one by one, all his father's trees. Father's trees means the trees grown by his forefathers. And for him it was a very enjoyable game. He felt a sense of victory when he used to bend down a branch of a birch tree until he took the stiffness out of them. He used to swing on them so continuously and so regularly that all the stiffness of the branch would go away and it would just bend down to touch the ground. Not one but hung limp. Not one was left for him to conquer. He learned all there was to learn about not launching out too soon and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. Now he says, one by one he used to win and he used to bend down all the branches of the birch tree, and to the point that no one branch was left for him to conquer. And he learned a lot of lessons. We say that sports and games and sports teach us a lot of lessons. But he also learned a lot of lessons. What did he learn? To learn about not launching out too soon. He used to climb on the tree and he learned balance. And he learned that he should not jump straight away. He should not launch out too soon, so not carrying the tree away. He used to take care of the tree also. Clear to the ground, he always kept his poise to the top branches, and he also learned balance. He says that, the poet says that he learned to keep his poise. Poise means balance and calm. To the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains you used to fill a cup to the brim. Now you see, when we fill tea in a cup, tea or milk, we take care that it should not spill on the table. So he also took care to climb carefully on the soft branches of the tree and even above the brim, and then he flung outward, feet first with a swish. And when he had climbed over the tree, he used to jump down with a swish, first feet. So he did not put his head downwards, otherwise he would be injured. So he learned the lesson that I should put my feet first with a swish. Now notice this word swish. This is a sound word, and this is an example of onomatopoeia. What is onomatopoeia? When the sound matches the word. For example, hiss, crack. And again, this word is also an example of onomatopoeia. Kicking his way down through the air to the ground. And he is kicking, means he is making a downward movements through his feet, and he comes with a balance to the ground. So thank you. It is all for today. We will continue tomorrow.